So that's the question. Yeah, my ideal. Yeah. My idea for this was, yeah, is there value in this symbology? There is for me, and is there for you, and can we turn this into a message? So yes, start wherever you'd like to start with looking at the image, yeah, or wherever.
Okay, I guess the first thing I've noticed when I look at this picture are the two pillars right up front. There's the two pillars, and that's immediately what comes to my head is the logic and creativity sides of our brain, our logic side and our creative side.
Yeah.
I immediately see, I see the back pillar as well. I see the 3, which is as a profound number. It's one of the numbers. It's one of the 3s.
Trinity.
Trinity, yeah. Yep. When I also see the stars, the sun, and the moon, which again is the Trinity. I see the checkered pattern, which I haven't put much meaning to, but I wanted to start on the outsides. I see that there's a south, east, and west. That's what I put to it, but there's no letter on the left side. But what are those letters on the outside of the entire image represent, if they represent anything?
So let's start, yeah, right at the beginning, right from the bottom, right from, if you could use this as an image in your mind of you looking back at this image and using it for yourself, you notice you're standing looking at pillars. You are in the west. You're looking east. The west, that signifies where the sun so-called sets, or set, or death, or the end of life. You're starting right here looking back from the end of your life right now in this very moment. Because your next moment isn't guaranteed and you could be dead next moment. Every moment of your life. That starts at conception and goes through birth all the way to death. Wherever that might happen in this process after conception, you're always standing in the west where the sun sets, so to speak. That's what this is saying. So as you look back toward the east where the sun rises, so to speak, where life begins, it's showing and signifying a life journey. So to start with, for the directions anyway, that's where you can start with for a reference point for what you're looking at in your position on this. So where after what does what
okay,
we're
if we're starting at the okay,
So,
I like
does that make sense?
Yeah, that does make sense, and that's
Now.
profound to hear that. Yeah,
So
to see the whole thing. So I guess now I would again start with at the outside again, just before we start moving upward, looking towards the east. The pattern on the outside, the squiggly lined pattern, does that represent anything?
Irrelevant to me.
Irrelevant? It's probably
could find
just
meaning
flair
however
for the
you want.
images, just
Like-
image flair.
Yeah, I wouldn't even put
Okay.
any voice to this one. I
And
don't have
then-
anything to add of value for you.
Okay, right.
Though you could look at the 4 tassels as the 4 corners of the earth, so to speak. Like just having 4 corners, and the 4 corners of the square, and this being part of the circling the square or squaring the circle, it's both at the same time intertwined is the point of this physical, metaphysical journey through symbolism I'm trying to do. Go ahead.
That's something that, yes, squaring the circle or circling the square, that's just a dot in there that I have. I don't have any internal value to like give to someone that I could, yeah. If you could like go more on what that is.
So, squaring the circle, yes, and this gets into the tools, 2 of the tools, the compasses and the square, but it's simply the circle represents heaven. The circle represents metaphysicality, spirituality, the unbrokenness of creation, the creator, the all. In order of magnitude, a circle as in a 0, showing nothing and everything all at once by orders of magnitude. Metaphysically, that's the circle. That's heaven, that's all. So, the square is physicality. The square is earth. The square is how that energy manifests in material form.
Okay.
If that makes sense. And the process of that, that's what those tools represent, and those tools are used for these mathematical, geometric equations and things and shapes to build things, to actually build physically things. But these ways in interpreting these tools that are shown, this is showing the inner building of the temple and one's own consciousness, one's own ordering of one's own knowledge, and tying together the circle and the square within oneself.
So the circle, just from my understanding, the square is inside of the circle then?
Well, yes.
Okay.
Yes, because of us, if you think of yourself as the square, we are the physical squares in creation, in the circle of creation of the all, in the circle that we can perceive around us, like the sky rotating above us. 360 degrees, as we can see 360 degrees around us physically here on the ground, on earth, under the heavens above.
Now I'm thinking like squared shoulders type actual thing, like, okay, no, I got you.
And this is the point. Yes, this is the point of this inner building. I'm glad you said that. The point of this in this inner temple, in considering the body, the temple of the Holy Spirit, or the unholy spirit, whatever kind of energy manifests within. The point of this inner building is looking all the way back there in the drawing to those blocks in the back, in the east, in the far east, the beginning of life. That's what you start off as. It's the one on the left, the rough ashlar. It's just a stone, a builder's stone, but you are that stone. The point is to polish the stone that is you, and to become the circle, to remove. It shows the polished, the one on the right, the perfect ashlar, which none of us can attain perfection, because that would make us God, and none of us are God. The point is to recognize we stand on the square of earth as physical beings that are tied together metaphysically by this unbroken circle of infinite energy that we can't comprehend fully, but we can feel. And these tools used within, symbolically within and related within, are the tools I feel that can help, yes, bring order out of the chaos of one's mind and thoughts and feelings of oneself in creation under the all, and to know, yes, we are all standing on the level, so to speak, on a level playing field under the all, and none of us are on pedestals above one another. And that's what, so that's to go a little further.
With circle and the square, yeah, that was good, thank you.
Yes, in the circle and the measurement to lead to the numbers, that first part of the quadrivium or arithmetic, but it's just the numbers. The measurement of that circle, you use pi. So pi, the 3.14, that can be found throughout nature, but it's the physical expression of a number that's infinite.
Right,
it represents infinity. Though even just the simple act of writing down the number or thinking about it in your mind with your physical body and brain, you're trying to imagine the all, and it's only a physical representation. Even if it's only a thought in your mind, your physical body and brain is trying to manifest that thought and consider infinity in a physical way here on earth in the moment while you stand here. And that tying together of that and knowing you can only try to comprehend infinity for a finite amount of time in your physical form, that leads to the depth of why these numbers are important and tied throughout nature, and tied also to go further to phi, the number phi, 1.618034, golden mean, golden ratio, golden section, the golden rectangle that can draw the golden spiral.
Is that number infinite as well?
Yes, it's another representation, but that number, that's not trying to measure
the circumference,
or the area of a circle. Yeah, that one is showing as Marty Leeds would put it, and puts it so well and so deeply, the degree of phyllotaxis, or the spiral of life, that golden mean. And that is represented throughout nature here in a finite form, manifests and within us. And the recognition of that, and to see and feel and know the intelligence of the design of this place that we're in, and the recognition that we can't hardly comprehend the interconnected depths of it all, to me proves it by feel and knowing inside that there is indeed a creator. And that's why these things are important to intertwine and take inside, to try and put order inside oneself, as I would say. And phi, and yes, phi. So phi, and since we're here already and I mentioned that being represented and shown real close in the cochlea of the ear, that spiral. And that's the ears, the physical ears of the temple. So this is about the metaphysicality of the temple, in the mind, the consciousness, inside that, the metaphysical part of the consciousness, that's right in between those physical spirals of life of the ears that you're using to hear the words that I'm speaking to you now. These reverberations and vibrations of sound that travel through the ether from me to you, from here to there, as your ears physically interpret those signals through the fluid in the ears as you listen here, wherever we are. I almost went into this. I'll leave that like the trail out.
That was good though. That was a good explanation, I think, for going off of squaring the circle. That actually gave me a lot more to like depth to. And then could get someone to that was good for that. Cool. And then we can just continue with whatever now.
Yeah,
we can go right to the, since I was starting at the west and looking east at the beginning of life, I will look right at the floor is what it's getting me more, where the tools are sitting on, everything's sitting on the checkerboard floor. And you had mentioned before that those are the little compartmentalized and fractured pieces of the reality here, physical experience that we're experiencing. I just didn't know if there was a meaning to each and every one, or if you just use that as a in general, that's to represent the compartmentalization of the stuff here.
Yeah, and that's the point. It's not, does it have specific meaning each one? It's what meaning does each one have for you? For me, looking at it, and it's the same for each of us, since we're all each uniquely individual in this experience that we have, each of us our own journey at the same time here in this place physically for as long as we're here. The point is that temple inside is a temple inside each of us. Each of us are that temple. So is there meaning for those blocks, those squares? It depends on what you put there.
Right.
What I put there, I use that as a way to order my mind to see the division, the duality, and the duality and separation of nature, where nature is not separated, it's not separate and dualistic in nature. Nature is unified. Nature is always unified. So the way we perceive things, though, we already see in a somewhat dualistic fashion through two eyes that perceive sight visually. And we see it from two separate eyes that crisscross. These images that we take in light crisscross from our eyes, traveling into the so-called hemispheres of our brain, right and left side. So what you see from your left eye is interpreted directly by the right hemisphere of your brain, and vice versa, that. But the recognition of that is you're already seeing it in an inverted fashion. So how easy it would be to separate nature and to make the mind see one thing on one side while picturing something on the other side. Think one thing while picturing another. And that's how the fracturing of ideas and concepts, I realized, had happened. So it's up to each of us to unify that into one coherent picture, to be able to see the duality being portrayed clearly, but to put order to it. And from...
Oh, sorry about that.
No, don't mean. So for me in the blocks, and it's different for everyone in the blocks, I sort of recognize the different ideas, labels, concept, black, white, left, right, Republican, Democrat, king, queen, prince, princesses, knights, and rooks, pawns on the chessboard, all playing by someone else's rules set up long before any of us got here, but just running on its own, just due to blind belief only. Why? For control. The how and the why is, see right here represented on the chessboard. It's the fracturing of those pillars and the perception and the inability for the tie together of logic and creativity, the left and the right hemispheres of the brain, to actually
blank.
Just how to. Too many places to go at once with what I just said, with what I'm looking at. Too many places. Whether it could be words attached to the images the mind makes creatively. So that's what it was. It was hemispheres of the brain, implying that the brain is a sphere, yet the brain is no sphere, because there is no face on a sphere. Yet there's a face on your head, on your skull, and that's the temple we're talking about. Also, there is no face on a sphere geometrically. So a globe is a sphere, yet there is a face of the earth, and we all stand on the face of the earth. That tie together physically and metaphysically for any that take the time to actually see what their eyes can see and realize their eyes cannot see infinitely, though there's much more right past the horizon of their vision, the flat horizon of their vision that can be zoomed in on, and they can see for themselves that what they stand on is indeed a flat face of the earth. Because again, like the square in the picture is used for, you put a square placed on a sphere and you will see there's no flat edge for it to sit on, just like there. Yes.
Right.
In that way, the pillars that are represented there, pillars are used to hold up a ceiling. Yet there's no ceiling picture. There's only the lights you can see above them, the sun, the moon, the stars, the luminaries we can see above us every day. Yet this place is very much physical, and it very much does have a roof. Yet we can only see through the roof. Through the firmness of the firmament that is that roof, I might say, maybe. Though who am I to say I can't get there? I can only look from here, as can everyone else. And that's why so many lies have come from that. So much sorcery has come from saying and misrepresenting what's above us and what we're standing on, to keep folks' temple, their logic and creativity broken, so they can never achieve that wisdom, that third pillar, that is their spine, the whole of their being, with the pillars in their mind, full of the strength and beauty of themselves in life and nature, of God's creation that they are and that they stand upon, and knowing that they cannot be God. We are all only images made in the image of God that can create other physical images in the likeness of us with our own reproductive creative energy. Though the misuse of that creative energy and the twisting of logic and the twisting of perception that's been done for generations has looted their temple, the temple between their temples, and made them consciously think that they're spinning through space in insignificant speck, when all along, had they only taken some simple tools of measurement and then used the simple tools of their own common senses to measure themselves in their reality, in their life, in their experience, in what they see and feel each day, each moment, and try to put order there. Well, that's the whole point of this talk, I guess, is to try and help someone else do such a thing within. And it takes getting the toxic information out and so many other physical toxins that have been trained and indoctrinated to create pictures in the mind of safety or health or sustenance that just aren't true, that aren't nature.
That was
Oh,
good.
that was
Thank you. Yeah,
yeah,
thank you for
whatever
that.
that one.
Because that just changed me too. Because when I looked at the third pillar, I guess before I had a skewed perception or just what I had taught from it. I had the two pillars of consciousness, which is the logic and creativity, but for some reason I was associating the third pillar with the third eye, the pineal, again in the mind. But when you use it as the spine, it actually made sense and was more like actually gave me a feeling inside hearing that.
Okay, because I could continue from there.
But I do have a question on
Yes,
that.
go right ahead.
The strength and beauty, the two pillars of consciousness, right?
Yeah.
I've noticed that the beauty one is taller, just slightly taller than the wisdom and the strength one. Is there?
You see these other differences here?
There is other differences.
But to revisit
yes.
real quick, and I'll go right to that.
Okay.
But since what you said about the third pillar and wisdom in the spine and the whole of your being, and what you said, the pineal gland, I would say yes, good. So I agree that third temple is very much the spine and connected with the pineal gland. It connects all of one's being in a straight up and down manner. In a vertical manner, so to speak, standing on a horizontal ground, which is what another tool down there, the plumb bob, is for, to measure level. In vertical, yes, is the vertical nature of your spine and the interconnection throughout your being, physically and metaphysically, to yourself, in yourself, to creation, in creation, to the Creator. Without those pillars of consciousness getting out of control and standing on top of one of those, thinking you are a version of that. So that's how some of the tricks go. So anyway, what else was it? The spine. It is connected with the pineal gland, and that could be a representation of that all-seeing eye right above that pillar in the center. Because you see the eye in the center of those rays, that's to represent the Creator. That is to represent that all is being seen, is seen from the outside and inside out. And not by us. We can only physically perceive what we can perceive. And that's in a limited sense. Yet in the temple of our mind, we can perceive and not perceive, but we can conceptualize things on the level, so to speak, of what would a creator may or may not do, or how could you do things here and this and that. And that is a powerful, powerful tool of conceptualization. It's also a powerful, powerful ego trap for one that's indoctrinated to use their consciousness in such a way to where they conceptualize how nature should work, and they know better than the Creator. So they're going to decide to implement their ways to control nature and physically manipulate nature and the nature of man and woman themselves to follow along with their twisted ideas of instilling their twisted ideas of creation into others, so others cannot see themselves or creation clearly. But that's what that represents. And when the toxins get out of the mind and the body enough to realize that that I does exist, it's not the sun, it's not the moon, it's not the stars. Those are only luminaries that we can see. They all impact us and influence us each day of our existence here physically. All the frequencies they operate by, all the vibrations they put off, however that travels and propagates into us and throughout us, throughout the ether, that's all up to the Creator. The eye in the center that we can, none, in my humble opinion, no man or woman could ever hope to come close to conceptualizing and distilling into an idea or a single name. Yet it seems for generations folks have done nothing but that and attached images, labels, ideas, this and that, and say it comes in the name of the Most High, so follow along. And that's someone that they don't have the key they don't have the key that's in the center of that hanging from the ladder in this picture. Because to travel the rungs up so-called Jacob's ladder, to order the consciousness and thought, the material and the metaphysical together, the heaven and the earth, into one. One has to climb the ladder in order one's consciousness. All those conflicting ideas of the black and white floor have to come together into a concise picture. That key, as you go up the ladder, that going up the ladder is the traveling of information and energy up and down one's spine. The key is hanging right in the center, because hanging right in the center of us as we stand vertically on this flat plane hangs in the balance a heart. Not sitting on the ground, but above it, because we stand on our feet. We stand on our feet vertically, upright as upright men and women, and if we can find the key to ourselves that's in the center, our heart, that is the key to this consciousness of the temple. So one doesn't get pulled too far one way or another, or one thinks one is the sun or the moon, or Horus or Ra or Isis or Osiris, or I could go on and on and on and on with the names and ideologies, but why bother? It's all the same. Because all of us are all the same. We're all men and women. We're all men and women that can have children that stand under a sun and a moon, and the 7 stars representing the 7 chakras, or the 7 energy points within inside each that need to be unified into one. Yet folks are easily drawn off one way or another with a specific feeling of energy in one way or another. It's easy to pull them left or right with the strength or the beauty, the left or right of whatever that ideology or idea or concept is, because they may lack that wisdom of the 3rd pillar of themselves, because they may not have unified the Trinity into a unity within themselves and become simply a humble man or woman, imbued and imbibed with spirit, because they've done the work to seek what the spirit is inside them. What?
That was, you were talking about going up the ladder now, which does lead me to the question. Is that a snake around the ladder? This purple stuff that's on the ladder, and then the woman at the top with the children, and then the woman up on the ladder. Does that have any significance, or does that just? Because I'm starting to understand now, like it's not any of these pictures, that it's really just the symbols themselves and how they've been laid out on pictures, and it's how you perceive and attach the inside to the picture. So it's really the sun, the moon, the Trinity, the duality, and it's about defining and attaching those symbols and understanding what they mean. Yeah,
it's finding meaning of your own for you,
and
not be steered by others, because others use symbology as an indoctrination tool. And if you don't have your own basis of knowledge, because you haven't looked for yourself deep enough to tie together things symbolically, at least enough to a place where you have found unity inside, which you've done without all of this, and that's why you can ask these questions, because you can't be led, because you found that unity in your heart. You found that key. So yeah, for me, I would just say what I see. What do I see just looking quickly at it? Because the details I don't get into when I look at these. I just get very broad pictures, and in my own mind and inside, I explore the temple, so to speak, in my own mind, and I stay anchored in that key I found in my heart of feeling where I am. And that's what helps me keep from putting myself in my mind in a position to where I think thoughts or conceive of things that I should not, because I used to. And it was the ordering of all those thoughts and getting the chaos out of the temple. That's what's important. The images that are programmed in over time. Contradictory information, contradictory images to nature, violent images to heal the trauma in the heart of what one experienced. But When I look at this, at the bottom of the ladder, I see, so I would see that at the base. At the base, it's one sitting with a book and tools of measurement. So that's the start, as we each started our journey, each of us, when we decided to seek or look or feel deeper, when we noticed something was amiss. It started the same for all of us. We started with study. This, I'm not talking, now I'm speaking because of what the image portrays. I'm speaking of one that stands atop the chessboard, that stands atop the game because one can see the game being played. And for that to happen, it starts at that base of the ladder, which one could flip that, I could say, even to the top, or you're starting it right from the top. You're starting with the top of your mind and your brain. Yes,
I got
surface layer of the consciousness of what we were programmed to think, only surface layer thoughts and perceptions and ideas of things. Yep. To break through that ice, so to speak, it took study and measurement, and actually for me, physical measurement with my eyes of how far I was seeing something that I was seeing, and could not possibly see something so far away if I was on a sphere, because of trigonometry and because the equation I was taught says so, with the size I was given of the sphere that we supposedly stand on this globe. It does not work, period. It's not there. It can't be measured. So, but then the measure of oneself inside, that's to get those ladders, to climb those ladders, that's to go deeper inside, not upward, but into the heart, toward that key inside, which is downward from the mind, from the temple of the skull. And it takes study the deeper you get, and then to get that key in the heart, the key of forgiveness, repentance, knowledge, understanding, wisdom, for it all to tie together, to see the tricks, see how one has been tricked, having done the work to correct oneself and one's perception and one's own senses into common sense that we all have to commonly interpret our senses correctly if we take the time to do it. It takes a lot of work going through that ladder inside and ordering the temple, but it leads to the heart and that key, and that I would say is the key to life, because when you get there in the heart with the mind not in chaos, the pillars of strength and beauty, of logic and creativity, of left and right brain are unified. The hemisphere is unified into one sphere of thought, so to speak, of every angle being able to be sensed, interpreted, recognized in the moment, every moment, while anchored in that key to life of the heart, because you can feel every moment of it, and so can every other man and woman who's living here and walking around with us. And in that way we find empathy. So this is much more than about the 5 common senses: sight, smell, sound,
touch,
but taste is one, but feel, I would say.
Feel
is most important of those 5, is to feel all of this, and to go too further because of the 7 chakras, the 7 stars displayed around that moon, the 7 energy centers. There's a couple more. There's that sense that we have, men and women, of intuition, and there's that sense of empathy. Those are metaphysical senses that have to be tied to the physical senses and become common within all, in an illuminated sort of fashion within, illuminated with morality in the heart. And to me, that's what that key represents, because when one finds that, then one can easily continue on life as what's portrayed at the top of the ladder. Holding a child, it looks like, doesn't it?
Yeah, several children.
And see.
It looks like several children underneath.
And that is
1, 2, 3, yep.
And to go further, since we're there at the heart, and before we get there, to find that empathy. That is how you go further down within oneself, which goes further up the ladder. But those snakes, where does those snakes come from? Those snakes are the root of all evil that can be found in the root chakra, all the way at the bottom, that tend to run the temple of someone who hasn't found that key of empathy. And that snake is the damage of the trauma that one has received in life, of the evil, of the so-called original sin, the 7 deadly sins. But now that one has found the key, one can translate those to the 7 virtues and bypass the snakes, because the snakes can now be seen. The trauma from the snakes can be healed. The snake energy of inside oneself, because all of us have the ability to be that ultimate version of darkness that a man and woman can be. That's the free will portion of this. And society has been led and indoctrinated and chemically castrated in mind and physically circumcised and spiritually circumcised in mind, in body, in spirit, by indoctrination. And these kinds of tools in one's own mind can let one see reality in a much more full, all-encompassing way, in my humble opinion. And then you bypass those snakes because you've rooted those out, because you've gone toward the power of the sun, or the power of life. That is only a representation now in this picture of life, in the sun that gives the plants, in us, in everything, the ability to grow in that spiral of life pattern. Is that the representation of the ladder to the left isn't something such as the left-hand path. No, this is not about the left or right-hand path, though some would interpret it that way to control someone, to make them go down a dark path. The key is to remember that one is upright and balanced as that 3rd pillar, but that representation of the ladder pointing that way, that light of the sun, and especially in taking through the eyes, the windows of the soul, can imbue one with the energy of life in a way that the screen will absolutely destroy and devastate. So I like to look at the sky. I suggest looking at the sky to see what the Creator has put for us to look at. And they're luminaries, and they travel above us each day. So, but it's with that study, it's with that knowing, it's with that key, it's with making the snake so obviously visible and aligning one's own energies in that way of morality. That's what allows one to then procreate and pass on life and the knowledge of life to the next generation in a correct fashion, in a moral fashion, in a way that can fix all the problems that we've come to find ourselves in right now on the ground we all stand on together, I would say. That's what I see in the picture. What do you see? I've talked a lot.
Really, I don't
or
know.
anything else for you?
Anything else you were just giving me, that was a good explanation, like real deep explanation of all that, which does connect a bunch of dots for me. It gives me a bunch more words and stuff I've already had just attached to now symbols and stuff, and that's really what it's just missing dots. I already had a lot of that information. It's just now, when I look at it helps when I look at this. It doesn't even necessarily have to be this image, but I can look at something and notice a trinity or pillars being stood up, or if they're displaying the sun or the stars and the moon or an eye. That's what I'm saying. It's about what depth have I put to the symbol of an eye, and how can I explain how they've used an eye to. Mm-hmm. So really, it's just giving me more knowledge, and you've been giving me more knowledge this whole video. So more words that I can distill through now, and to distill into wisdom. And it's more knowledge on the symbology, which is like, I think the last thing that I have to do is.
That's what I think will help others, is the looking at the symbology and dispelling the fear associated with it, because it's been used to steer the society with wrong imagery attached in whoever's mind it is that sees that symbol. It's either used to lure them or or to
Sway
steer them
away.
away. Yes, it's one way or another, but it's used to steer or lure in some sort of fashion because they don't, whoever it might be, hasn't looked into symbology and dispelled the fear or gained the knowledge for themselves. Yes. So here another point, unless you have something.
No, I was just...
Okay. To go back to something you said earlier. You mentioned the differences in the tops of the pillars. There are differences there, and there are interrelationships that can be made from that. The top of the left pillar, Doric pillar, is the simplicity of the top of the design of that pillar. The simplicity of it, of the Doric column, of that design, it's a very simple thing is what I see there. Very simple, the strength in the power of life and the power of growth in things, but also the strength in simplicity in grammar itself, if you want to associate this with the words and definitions. This is logic, the logical analyzation of life itself, and the strength of what a word means and the meaning that word has and the depth of that. It's very, very simple, the logic, and it can be very, very clear and should be. And on the right pillar, that much more intricate design compared to the other two, that's the Corinthian tower, that's on the representation of beauty. Also above that, the moon, or the nighttime representation, or the representation of what one can picture creatively in the mind. The lesson there is, yes, you can imagine and put together the pictures of the simplicity of the grammar, of the logic, of the words and meanings of a definition, say in the left side of your brain, and you can see clearly a picture with depth with the right side of your brain, the pillar of beauty, the right brain, the creativity, and you can see the profound depths with that imagination when they're intertwined. And then again, the point is to strike that balance, that middle pillar, that pillar, ionic pillar. You see on the top of that one is a combination maybe of the two to the left and the right. It's a combination of simplicity and beauty put together into one. And I would say that is the wisdom of combining the simplicity of the power of one side of things with its mirror into one image.
But is there any reason that one side would be taller than the other ones? Or is it just two different? Because you see that these ones are equally made. It seemed to be.
As far as that pillar being taller, as I look at it, all I could give you maybe, for me, because that's all these are for anyone, it's how they use these in their own mind. But I had no answer for that question when you asked it just then, but as I look, I wonder. I would say, if the right or the creative part of the mind, the right part of the mind is suppressed and turned down into darkness, it's easy to make oneself think that they're much more than they are and put themselves above because they are in the dark, because they don't have full knowledge tied together in a balanced way possibly. So it might be a way to where metaphysically it shows the power of the imagination and the grand things that one could perceive and imagine that's way above one's own level.
Right.
And to keep in mind not to get trapped there and to think that you're above a level than you are, especially on the level of, because that's where so many get lost. They're indoctrinated into thinking that they are on the level of the Creator, and they can't realize that they've only been put there in their own mind. And everyone that stands everyone that stands truly unified within themselves and with the Creator in creation, in nature, can see that those damaged pillars of beauty or sleeping parts of mind in others where their imagination is being run by others and they have no full, they're left without a firm grasp of reality itself. They're lost in the imagination of others without the pillars of themselves tied together into unity, into physicality. That's maybe a thing to remember, because I'm not sure. To keep in mind the 5 senses and the 7 senses when you add intuition and empathy, when listening or when traveling in the mind or imagination, pinch yourself. You're material, you're still here. Don't get lost in mind, or don't get lost in reality isn't real, because pinch yourself, you'll feel it. And those pillars of consciousness will alight. The neurons in the brain, in the mind will alight with those signals being felt throughout the body, throughout all the systems of the body. And go right up to those 12 cranial nerves in the skull and the temple to let one know that, yes, one is indeed here. The key is to remember you only have a limited amount of heartbeats to recognize these things, and to maybe find humility, morality, repentance, to maybe walk the narrow path. Because there is God, and that's what they've hidden, and that is the I, the all-seeing I that we can't perceive, that can though perceive through all of us and knows all the thoughts that have taken place in the temples of our minds and that have happened and played out in our hearts, the feelings in our hearts. And there is no hiding from it. And the snake that drove all that darkness from the roots within each of us and drove us to do darkness in this place that we all find ourselves, due to the sick, twisted imagination of others being induced and trained into mankind and womankind, into their children. So why is this important to me? To me, these same tools that have been used to loot our temples of the spiritual gold, that is the gold that we all need to find, the metaphysical gold within, of those 7 chakras, of the 7 colors of the rainbow, so to speak, all coming together into a golden unity of light within our hearts, in our minds, illuminated under the lights of the luminaries the Creator put above us. That's why it's important, because these tools can help one find God within and seek God all around and throughout, within and without. And that to me is how we bring order from chaos within. And that's the key in the heart to win the war of all the battles of mind.